12 candidates have been shortlisted for the post of Inspector General of Intelligence. The post involves the monitoring of intelligence and counterintelligence activities of the State Security Agency. But for more on the significance of this post and the caliber of candidates who have been shortlisted, we're joined now by the DA's State Security Shadow Minister, Dianne Kohler Barnard, and from the Institute for Security Studies, Executive Director Jakkie Cilliers. A very good evening to the both of you. Let me start with you, Mr. Cilliers. What exactly is the role of the Inspector General of Intelligence as it relates to the overall and the entirety of South Africa's intelligence services?
So my understanding is that the Inspector General is supposed to monitor intelligence and counterintelligence activities of the State Security Agency and the intelligence divisions of the South African Police Service and the South African National Defence Force. So he or she is supposed to really look at accountability across all three, the departments that have an intelligence function in South Africa. So a very important appointment.
Let me come to you, Ms. Kohler Barnard. The issue of accountability was one that was mentioned by Mr. Cilliers here as one of the roles and the responsibilities, including, obviously, overall monitoring and reporting. We've just been hearing from the South African Human Rights Commission that has been looking into the July unrest. And what has come out from there is that there was little to no intelligence at all regarding the state of affairs and the impending threat to state security. How and why does South Africa find itself in this situation?
Well, I think that's a multifaceted question. The committee that I sit on, the JSCI, Joint Standing Committee on Intelligence, I think this 5-year term has been far more productive than perhaps the members of the previous 5-year term for various reasons. You'll recall the country sat for almost 2 years with no Inspector General of Intelligence after a very unpopular candidate was put forward and failed to get the 2/3 majority. So we eventually got Dr. Dintwe, who's in the incumbent, and indeed he's one of the candidates. And he is looking into matters, as will the committee, behind closed doors. What you're seeing currently is out there in the public domain, so perhaps sensitive issues that should not perhaps be in public would be discussed within the committee. We're hearing a lot of claims and counterclaims. I'm seeing enormous anger on part of some of the SAPS members. Everybody's throwing everybody else under the bus. You'll remember the infamous interview where Ayanda Dlodlo threw Jakkie Cilliers under the bus and Jakkie Cilliers threw her under the bus. And the reality is we have to get to the absolute truth of what happened. Sadly, crime intelligence within the SAPS, it was doing extremely well under General Jacobs, who was summarily removed, suspended, brought back, and then dumped somewhere else. And it was left floundering as head after head left and was transferred and left and disappeared and didn't come to work. It was in a catastrophic state, and it was the perfect storm as far as the July unrest was concerned.
Mr. Cilliers, some of the allegations and what has come out from the South African Human Rights Commission is that there seems to be a politicization of intelligence, and that is one of the reasons why the intelligence facilities and services were not rendered as they ought to have been in July. What is your comment on that?
Well, I think there's no doubt about that. Evidence has been led in the Zondo Commission and now again with regard to the evidence around the July violence that are, for all practical purposes, South Africa does not have a functioning intelligence capacity. The recommendations of the Commission of Inquiry on Intelligence was absolutely damning. There is really a need for a reinvigoration, whatever term you want to reconstitution of the intelligence capability. And this comes at a very difficult time. South Africa is facing escalating internal unrest and instability because of poor growth, unemployment, people are desperate. And then we face a region where we have terrorism in Cabo Delgado, instability in Eswatini, and an unstable region. We need decisive and concerted action. Intelligence we are stumbling around blindly in South Africa, not only internally but regionally. And this has a lot to do with the extent to which particularly cadre deployment and the politicization of the intelligence agency has destroyed our capability, whether you are speaking about defense intelligence, crime intelligence, or the state security agency. We face, there's a real need, I think, for decisive action, and I'm hoping that the appointment of a capable Inspector General, or the reappointment, if it's the current candidate, can help in that process. But President Ramaphosa needs to take firm action across the security cluster, because we face instability in South Africa, in the region, and it's not going to get better in the years that lie ahead.
We'll take a look at some of the shortlisted candidates in just a moment. But Mr. Cilliers, Ms. Kohler Barnard spoke about issues that are discussed behind closed doors, extremely sensitive information as far as intelligence is concerned. Now South Africa is basically laid bare, not only for South Africa, but for the whole world, to see the nature or the lack of preparedness in our intelligence. Does this make us more susceptible to any sort of internal or external danger, Mr. Cilliers?
Without a doubt. Without a doubt. We really are in a bad situation. Stability is a prerequisite for growth and for development. And South Africa is increasingly unstable, and the region is increasingly under threat. So we need to get this sorted, and quickly. And the key here is the appointment of capable people based on competence, not based on party political loyalty.
Is this something that is likely to be a reality, Ms. Kohler Barnard?
Well, look, the high-level report was damning. That was a full investigation into the entire intelligence system in the country. That has been out since 2018, and we're still awaiting results. You still have various factions playing themselves out within all three of the units. We've seen recently the minister removed, and the entire JSCI put under the president, who has never attended the meeting or never had a meeting with the JSCI since I've been around, and presumably will now in future. So there's a lot of uncertainty. There's some very strange moves. Many of them, I think I agree, have been political out there. You heard enormous amounts of information come out during the Zondo Commission, day after day after day. The minister attempted to shut various people up from state security. They spoke anyway. Advocate Dintwe revealed enormous amounts of things that just shouldn't be happening and shouldn't be done. And it all came out. So it's going to be fascinating to see the final report of the Zondo Commission, and to see if, in fact, eventually people will be brought to book, will be arrested for things that happened years ago that ended up with the looting of hundreds of millions of rands through state security. So we're all waiting on that. And unfortunately, people have moved on with their lives. They've been promoted. They've got other high-level jobs. And here we're still hearing the same story. Look, this is what's happened. This is what's happened. This is where the money went. And unfortunately, those people are, no, not one of them is behind bars. But we will wait now for the Zondo Commission report to come out, and that's going to make fascinating reading.
Mr. Cilliers, post the July unrest, we saw the president scrapping the Ministry of State Security Agency and having that portfolio directly in his office, the office of the presidency. Is this a prudent move?
Well, under the circumstances, probably yes. It makes the president the Minister of Intelligence in South Africa, and as Dianne Kohler Barnard indicated, he is then, in actual fact, in a sense, accountable to the committee, or he should appear in front of the committee. Irrespective of how that goes, it is very important that the president, that South Africa, pays attention to the situation in the broad security cluster: intelligence, policing, defense, the entire criminal justice system. And we have in South Africa a culture of secrecy, excessive secrecy, and the abuse of intelligence for party political purposes. For example, quite probably we will find that if a suitable candidate does not appear on the Inspector General of Intelligence, then he or she will be refused top secret clearance. We've seen that game being played over and over again in South Africa. What we need to do is we need to move intelligence and the entire criminal justice system and defense out of party political competition and move it into a space where if there is in 2024 a new government that perhaps is not led by the ANC, which I think is highly unlikely, but just for the purposes of the discussion, that intelligence and the security agencies will survive a government transition, a political transition in South Africa. These should not be party political appointments. These should be experts that are appointed on competence and their integrity.
You bring up a really interesting point about the role of the inspector or the intelligence general. Now, this particular role only was formed in 1994, and this post was answerable directly to the president. What is the body or the structure that predated the existence of this office?
As far as I know, there was no Inspector General of Intelligence before 1994. There were, I think, various internal agencies. At that point, you had national intelligence under Neil Barnard. You had the Bureau, police, the security branch within the police, which is where most of the excesses happened, as well as in defense intelligence. Now, within each of these departments, there were supposed to, as I understand it, to have been internal oversight and inspector generals, for example, in defense. You certainly didn't see the excesses, the abuse of money to the extent that you've seen it now, although there was the so-called Infogate scandal, which in response then P.W. Botha appointed Neil Barnard as the head of intelligence. So I think that what we've seen generally is a deterioration in accountability, strangely enough, within the intelligence services under the ANC. That may sound strange, but I think that you didn't have that sort of lack of accountability that you seem to have at the moment.
Ms. Kohler Barnard, with the 12 candidates that have been shortlisted, which come out and spring out for you? I mean, there have been a couple of names that have been highlighted as names to look out for, but which of these candidates do you believe have the criteria that is needed in order to fulfill the role of, intelligence general outside of the political furore?
Well, just to point out, I read reports yesterday that advocate Sam Wafe, who recently retired as head of domestic security, has pulled out for personal reasons. I don't know why he would do that. He was shortlisted. And look, there are the criteria to be able to be acceptable for this job, shall we say, is that the person must be a fit and proper person and must have experience and intelligence. They can't come in cold. Our committee obviously handles the interviews, and it has been pulled together in the way that every single candidate has sufficient expertise. They've been in the intelligence arena. They understand the systems, the way things work, the way things should work. They have frequently have managerial experience. Pretty much everybody there has extensive education. There are advocates and doctors and really highly competent people throughout. There was anyone who didn't. There were people who were very highly educated but had no experience in intelligence, so they automatically fell away. So it was actually not difficult, and there was not a lot of debate on putting this list together. But I think what you see on that list is a number of highly competent people with the right expertise who could do the job. It's a tough job because, I mean, Dr. Dimpho has been under attack pretty much his entire term because he does things that that ministers don't like and people inside don't like, but it's no different to him to being the head of the IPID or any other oversight body.
And I mean, you have really answered this question in the way that you would, because you are part of that committee that will oversee the entire process. So, Mr. Cilliers, from your perspective, which of the candidates do you believe are perhaps, most suited as far as being front runner is confirmed? We've seen Dr. Dinto as well coming up a number of times. He currently holds the post. Your thoughts?
I don't think really it's appropriate for me to comment on the individual candidates. I'm encouraged by the remarks by Ms. Barnard, which is really good to hear. But I think that all that I can say is that this is really about the quality of the candidate and his independence and his or her integrity. This is a tough job. The intelligence community has frustrated the task of the Inspector General of Intelligence over many, many years. And this is somebody that must be able to really hold these services to account and that must understand intelligence. But I don't think it's appropriate for me to comment on the candidates.
I thank you both very much for your time this evening as we focus on this role of Intelligence General. The South African public has up until January to submit their comments. So if you have any comments in any of the 12 candidates, you may submit those before the closing date, which is January. That was Jakkie Cilliers from the Institute of Security Studies, as well as Dianne Kohler Barnard from the Democratic Alliance. Thank you so much to both of you.